Todd Golden, the Florida Gators were a really fun team last year. They had a great season. Unfortunately, didn't end on the best note with that terrible injury to Micah Handglocken, and then losing on the buzzer in that first round tournament game to Colorado. But Florida has a lot to be excited about this year. Christian here with Chris Harry, who covers Florida for FloridaGators.com. Chris, thank you so much for being here with me. It's a lot to be excited about. How are you feeling down there in Gainesville?
Well, one of the things Todd Golden did his first season, obviously last year was his second season with Florida. He did a real good job his first off season of evaluating his roster and pointing some fingers at himself, saying what we did right, what we did wrong. And they did a lot of house cleaning. And the house cleaning last year, I think they were 7 different players left. I know that's not unusual in this landscape of college basketball right now. But they did hit some home runs in the transfer portal in Tyree Samuel, and especially with Zion Poulon, who was a first-team All-League point guard last year. And that equated to the first NCAA tournament berth since 2021, most wins in the program since 2017, won 11 games in the conference. So the idea going into this after last year and that loss against Colorado was he looked at himself, we're going to do more self-evaluating, and that self-evaluating started on the defensive end of the ball. And you mentioned the Colorado game. You lose a game 102 to 100 in the NCAA tournament you surrender 60, I think it was 65% shooting in the second half. At one point, you give up 11 straight made field goals. A lot has to change. And so what Florida did was go out and find guys that are going to help them play defense better this year with the idea of not sacrificing much on the offensive end. Last year, they were number 12 in the country in offensive efficiency versus number 94 in defensive efficiency. They want to get those numbers, a little closer to each other, preferably without sacrificing a lot of what's gone on offense. And from what I've seen, and I've been to 50 practices or so since the offseason, they've done a really good job. First of all, they brought back 5 core players from that 24-win team. That's kind of unusual in this era. I'm going to keep mentioning this era because it is a little different when players aren't getting theirs or want to play more and whatever and go on. But five guys from his main rotation are back, and they brought in 3 transfers. The one name that a lot of fans may recognize is Elijah Martin from Florida Atlantic. He scored 26 points in a Final Four game just 2 years ago. He was, along with John L. Davis, one of the best. Were the 2 best players on that FAU team the last couple years. He immediately makes him a better defensive player. What he does is contagious. He's also unselfish. He also rebounds. Ruben Chinyelo is a Washington State transfer at 6'11", about 250 pounds. I'm saying he's the most athletic, maybe the best big they've had here since Patrick Young in 2014. And he's a different version of Patrick Young because he's more fluid, he's more twitchy, he's longer. I think he has a 7'8", 7'9" wingspan. He's going to be a force defensively, provided he can stay out of foul trouble. And the last transfer they got of impact was the name Sam Alexis, averaged almost a double-double at UT Chattanooga last year. He's going to play a lot. He's not going to start, but I just mentioned 3 difference makers that'll be on the defensive end, and now you roll into a starting lineup that already has Walter Clayton Jr., who I think is going to have a monster season this year. He was second-team All-League last year, scored the most points, had the highest average of a Florida Gator since 2004 at 17.6 points a game. He'll step in there. Alex Condon was all SEC freshman last year. Australian kid, was I believe 6th in the league in rebounding last year as a true freshman. Then you got Will Richard, who's kind of had an off year shooting the basketball last year. He like Walter Clayton, he went into the NBA eval process and emerged with a lot of feedback that he has applied to his offseason and getting ready for this season. The AP poll came out this week. Florida is number 21 preseason, and that's in a league that I believe has 8 teams that are ranked. So Florida, I think they're picked 7th. But I like what Todd Golden said in his interview process at the SEC media days this week. He said, if the season, we're grateful to be 21. It says something for our program, but if we're 21 at the end of the season, we're not going to be very happy. So they have high goals for themselves, and he's a very analytical coach, like a lot of the younger coaches are these days. They have metrics they intend to hit, goals they intend to hit, and that's where it all starts. And they open the season in a little less than 3 weeks in Jacksonville against the University of South Florida. I talk too much, but that's what
No, you're good. You're good. There's so many different ways I want to take it. The first thing I want to do is, you mentioned having the 12th best offense last year and 94th defense. To me, a large part of what Todd Golden wants to do is obviously crash the offensive glass, top 10 in offensive rebounding rate, and play fast, 17th in tempo. So to me, I didn't want to like put on Florida they were a bad defensive team. I just want to be like, they're just playing fast and they're so good at scoring that like that's just kind of what's happening on the other end. So I guess what my question is, why do you think the defensive numbers were low last year? Do you think it was personnel based? Do you think it was on the staff for not getting guys in the right positions? Or do you think it was more so just a byproduct of playing so fast, and because they could score so easily, it was just hard to, I guess, get them to like super dial in on the defensive end because they just ended up in these high scoring games?
Well, they gave up too many straight line drives. They weren't great on ball screen defense. And just calling it like it is, and if he was sitting here next to me, Walter Clayton would say he wasn't very good on defense. Zion Pullen played a lot of minutes last year and played on the ball against a lot of good players. I think he wore down toward the end of the year. Tyrese Samuel, not a great defensive player down in the post. So the replacements of two of those guys, I said Zion and Tyrese, and they were both great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they were one of the reasons Florida had a great season last year. But they were looking for ways to upgrade. And Ruben Chinyeyu is not Tyrese Samuel. This is a guy who, like I said, he has trouble. He could have trouble staying on floor if he doesn't learn how to play with his hands up and play vertically. He didn't start at Washington State, but he has a very, very high ceiling in terms of what he could become in the post for this team. I think Alex Condon was great defensively last year in his first year of college basketball. I'll say the same thing about Tommy Hawk, who was a freshman last year also, and is going to make a huge step this year. He may be a 25-minute guy for the team this season. But Elijah Martin on the perimeter is going to change them the most because of the way he moves, because of his length, because of his aggression. This guy was a high school quarterback. He was the MVP of the Alabama-Mississippi State football game back in high school. So it's kind of like in his DNA to get after people, and everyone on a team to a man believes what he's going to do on the perimeter is going to kind of translate and spread and kind of bleed throughout the rest of the team. So 94th in defense, unacceptable. Anything close to that, I think they'd like to cut that. I want to say in half. That's pretty ambitious. But if they could cut a third out of that, I think the results may speak for themselves, even in a league that's going to be as good as this one.
Todd Golden was 26th his last year at San Francisco defensively. I think that's more the range where he wants to be in. And that was still an offensive team that had a lot of fun guards who liked pushing the pace and scored a lot of points. So it is totally possible that his formula he has his vision, right? And a lot of it was clicking last year, and that's kind of that last piece. I love the way you're talking about Elijah Martin. Love bringing in a guy like that, staying in Florida, didn't follow Dusty May to Michigan, but the way you're describing him is just making me really obsessed with this fit, because obviously we know that him playing with pace, getting a bunch of threes up, being like a secondary creator in the backcourt is perfect for him, and that he thrives in that role. But also just from a leadership element on the defensive end, and just a guy who's won at a super high level in college, like I think he's going to fit in perfectly alongside Richard and Clayton. We know how good Clayton is. Obviously, some of the shots he hits, I'm just in awe of him. He's so hard to keep in front of off the bounce, but just a ridiculous offensive player, just so skilled. And then Will Richard, you mentioned the shooting numbers last year weren't as good as we'd expect. I would have thought he was a higher than a 34% three-point shooter. He shot 40% his first year at Florida. So I think Will Richard, I would expect those numbers to go up a bit this year as well. I want to dive a little bit more into Alex Condon. He's a guy I've also circled as a breakout candidate this year. Playing behind Micah and Tyrese, he would come in and just provide so much energy on the glass, can finish around the rim. Defensively, I didn't really notice a drop off. Like I thought he was, for a freshman, like coming off the bench, I thought he was really solid. Tell us more about just kind of his development going into this sophomore season and how high you think his ceiling is. Is he a guy that, will be one of the best offensive rebounders in the nation, like Micah and Tyrese were? And do you think he's a guy that they'll kind of like play through in the post a bit as well?
Yeah, I think, all those things. I don't know that he can be the kind of offensive rebounder that Micah was. He was one of the best in the country last season. But, this is a guy who was an Australian rules football player, and his father was an Australian rule all-star football player. So, I talked about DNA before with Elijah Martin and his football background. This guy's a tough kid, man, and he is in the middle of it all, does not back down from anything. I'm telling you, when Ruben Chineo parachuted in here, the whole team got a dose of his physicality, his forearms, his elbows, and he takes no prisoners with regards to some of that, sometimes to the detriment of his teammates. Alex Condon was the recipient of some of that stuff. I remember Walter Clayton walking off a practice here. He goes, "Man, Condo's going to have CTE before he's done with the summer." And so, but he doesn't shy away from that stuff. And as much as you want to mention Alex, and again, he was voted to the all-conference preseason team this year, so the expectations for him are what they are externally also. But Tommy Hawk is his best friend, and he's almost a version of Alex Condon in that mentality at that 3-4 spot. So you got those two guys on the floor, and they're always one of them's going to be on the floor a lot with Ruben. And if they're ever on the floor together, forget about it, because it's three guys that play incredibly, incredibly hard. And it's one thing to play hard; you got to be good. All those guys are going to be able to play basketball. And to mention Alex Condon's next step in his development, probably a little bit of improvement on his offensive game. Those baby hooks that he likes to shoot down in the block. He's incredibly athletic and can run all day. If you have listeners that are soccer fans or international fans, they have a thing called a beep test, where you do this rhythmic running and you have to run faster and the pace changes with this beep. Tommy Hawk won it for the whole team. He ran 58 of these up and backs in a matter of 18 minutes. Alex Condon was second on the team, and this thing is really, really hard. It's a test that encourages failure and quitting. And both of those guys, they ended up going at each other at the end, and Thomas Hawk winning that. So, there's just a lot to be encouraged about this team. It's going to be about 9 deep. There's some competition right now for who that, I call them, I say 8.5, excuse me, about 8.5 deep. There's going to be some competition among the new guards, two of the new guards, and Kaius Kablikis is a returnee who didn't play very much last year, for whoever's going to be that guy playing 10 minutes at the end of the rotation. But they got 8 guys in the main rotation that are really, really good players. Usually you have a guy you put in the game, okay, let's try to survive the next few minutes. They don't have anything like that. And, it's a really optimistic time for Florida basketball right now, I think, relative to this season.
As we get into this bench, Denzel Aberdeen randomly popped up for that 20-point game against A&M in the SEC tournament, and he looked really good. And obviously there were a lot of guards. Obviously Riley Kugel was touted as an NBA draft guy, starts coming off the bench, and then off to Kansas and then switched to Mississippi State. But anyway, Aberdeen was kind of buried on the depth chart. Do you think he is a guy that can be playing 20-ish minutes a game as a guard? And how random was that 20-point game against A&M? Because I don't think I knew who he was when I saw him doing that.
It was random for fans that hardly saw him play very much. It wasn't random for what you see in practice every day. And here's Denzel Aberdeen and Riley Kugel were high school teammates who won a state championship together, believe it or not. And, so they were very, very close. But yeah, he hopped off the bench, I believe, in that game. I think he was 4 or 5 from 3, maybe 5 or 6 from 3 in that game. Had 20 points. He's absolutely going to play 20 minutes. I mentioned the 8 guys. He's certainly one of them. He is the what you would call the closest thing to a prototypical point guard on this team. Walter Clayton knows that. Walter Clayton gets the first crack, obviously, to be the PG one was this team, but there's going to be games where Denzel Albertine's playing 25 minutes. I don't know if it has to do with foul trouble or if he's got his shot going on, but he's very athletic, and frankly, he's like the antithesis of a lot of college athletes these days. I mean, he didn't play very much as a freshman, and he didn't leave. He could have played a lot more last year, but he really needed to gain trust from the coaches, and that eventually did happen later in the season. And they basically said, he's taken the old time, which should be the conventional journey to get to the point where he's going to be a very, very good player here for the next 2 years. And whatever he does this year, they'll have huge expectations for him his senior year when he'll be a starter on the team, and they'll build around him next year.
I love that, and I mean, I'm on board with you. I love seeing guys develop within the program, and it works. And there's a reason that's why it was that way for so long. Obviously, the rules made it set up that you kind of had to do it that way, but there's a lot of strength in that manner. So seeing a guy tough it out instead of running away and crying because he's not getting his minutes, I think is awesome to see. I would be remiss not to ask about two big men on Florida, one of which is obviously Micah. I don't expect him to play this year, but I'm just wondering how his recovery is going. And then I'm going to just part to it that you can transition into. When you have a 7'9" guy who can go viral in Olivier Roux, I'm shocked that Purdue and Matt Painter didn't get his hands on him. I understand he wasn't highly ranked and that he's not expected to play. I don't know if the plan is to officially redshirt him, but can you tell me what it's been like having Olivier Roux there and how at that size, if he can move a tiny bit and catch the ball, why he can't get out there for a few minutes a game just to cause a problem?
Well, we're past the circus element of it by now because he got here, in the middle of the summer. But yeah, anyone who sees him for the first time can't believe him. I mean, I have pictures, and those first days when he was out there, I have pictures of him that I took to show some friends of mine because obviously all summer long no one sees him, where he's standing in team huddles next to 7'1" Micah Handlockton, and 7'1" Micah Handlockton looks like 6 foot Micah Handlockton or something. But he is a project. He's not going to play this year. If that's the plan at least. But what I tell people, and I get a lot of questions about him, obviously, he stays after practice. He takes his extra reps. He does his cardio and all these things. His skill set just hasn't caught up to his size, and frankly, it may never do so. But you mentioned Purdue and Zach Edey. It's not unlike what they were going on with him when he was a freshman. Olivier doesn't turn 19 until March or February or something. So he's got a lot. He's got the perfect attitude. They sold him on a vision here. Come here and work, and let's see what happens, because you're not good enough to play right now. And he wasn't. I mean, he was at IMG and wasn't playing a whole lot there. I saw him. He's getting more into the scrimmages now, and before that wasn't even the case. They just kept him off to the sideline doing some stuff and off to the side while they were scrimmaging. And the last night, he got in there and made a one nice move for a dunk, and then made a great pass to the wing. And then, like 3 possessions later, he came down and he missed a layup with no one guarding him. So there's something there, because you walk in, you go, wow, okay, just stick him under the basket and have him put his hands up. No one will score. It doesn't work that way. Ruben Chinelli and Condon get him on their hip and then score at will on him right now. So there's a lot to do relative to footwork and athleticism and just learning how to play the game of basketball at his size. So you won't see, if you see him this year, I'm not going to say I'll be totally surprised, but the Rowdy Reptiles are going to be calling for him. I guarantee it, because he'll be sitting on the bench and they love their walk-ons at the end of games.
And then Micah, definitely out for the season. How's his recovery going?
The plan is to redshirt him, and so he'll have 2 years of eligibility left. He's out there every day. He actually is now he's standing on the court and doing passing He can't move laterally yet. Probably too much for a wrist there. it's funny, they have the Alt-G machine, which is the thing that you recover from. It's an anti-gravity machine that you run in to recover from knee injuries, and he's too tall for it. So it's kind of like he's coming back slowly. He's dunking basketballs, he's taking free throws, but I mean, if they wanted him back, yeah, he could probably be back in January or February. But I think of Paul George. I think of Gordon Hayward. Those are the guys who had injuries like that, and they took 10 months. And I think just with the way Florida is situated at their bigs, and they play four, they sold him on this very, very early. This is what we think you should do. We're going to go get some guys. And he was fine with it. And he's been a really, really good teammate. And anybody who saw that, what transpired in that Auburn game last year, when he was injured, and saw how his team knows how much, how they feel about and how much they love Micah Handlogten.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, just an absolutely brutal injury. I agree, especially with a college kid. There's no reason to rush him back, especially with the depth of the team. Like, let him have the whole year and off season, and he'll be a way better player, and it'll just be good mentally. Just way more time to prep. So good to hear that he's progressing well. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it on the note of, like, Florida was so fun last year. It was just a really fun team to watch. The way, just the electricity of the guards, the energy of the bigs, the offensive rebounding, the pace. Like, it was just fun. And we started this call off talking about defensively is clearly the place to improve. But with the backcourt, seniors who we know can shoot the ball, who can all put the ball on the floor, Martin's defensive juice, Aberdeen's jump, and then Chinyelu, you seem super high on, the guy who comes from a team that was a 7th seed in the tournament last year, whose athleticism popped, wasn't super refined offensively, but because Florida's offense is so reliant on the guards and the offensive rebounding and the ball screens, he doesn't need to have this crazy offensive bagger to shoot the basketball at the 5 spot to play in Todd Golden's system. So much to be excited about. I guess any final notes, nuggets you've seen from practice or heard in press conferences this year, or anything about any of these freshmen or even Sam Alexis at Chattanooga we didn't spend a lot of time on? Anything you want to end it on of just something that we didn't?
Well, just hit on those. Sam Alexis is probably the most skilled big on the team. I had a friend of mine come in who does did radio commentary for years, including when Billy Donovan was here, and he was asking me about Sam, and I said he's really, really skilled. He goes, but below the rim, right? I go, no. He can play above the rim. So this is a guy who's going to play a lot of basketball. And like I said, average a double at Chattanooga. Obviously, he's from Orlando, so he wanted to come home, wanted to play at a higher level. So if there's he's a 4-5. He can shoot the three. He'll have the green light for that. Guys seem to come here, and bigs are told they can come here and shoot the three. But how many threes they shoot depends on if they start making a few, obviously. Got an international kid by the name of Urban Klajar, who came from Slovenia, and he has a chance to play, whether it's this year or down the line. He was this close to being the MVP of the U20 European Cup. They won the silver medal over there, and he was the leading scorer on the team, the leading assist guy on the team. I don't think he's a true point guard. He's closer to a combo guard than that. But, he doesn't go unnoticed at all, and I'm probably underselling him a little bit, but the guards on this team are so good, it's going to be hard for him to punch his way through. But to go back to your initial point, this team, it's going to start with maintaining offense. It set a record in scoring last year at 86.7 points a game. That was the school record. The last 10 games of the season, they gave up 87 points a game. So there's your goals. Be the same high-scoring team and fix that defense. And that's been the theme since these guys started off-season practice back in May. And it's something he talks about every day. That and they compete so hard. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon, which is why I think this is going to be a pretty good team this year.
Awesome. It's going to be a fun home environment as well in this loaded SEC. And I know they haven't backed it up yet with a tournament win, but I think Florida absolutely nailed this hire of Todd Golden, and I think it's going to be a fun era of hoops at Florida starting the season. So thank you so much for joining, Chris. Appreciate all of your insight. Awesome having an expert who was, at so many of the practices this year and has been covering the team for a while. So thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you very much.